Hey, what up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're talking about the top 10 best thrash bands of all time according to loudwire.com, which interviews a lot of bands. And you have right at the top of the screen right here, you have Dave Mustaine, you have Slayer, and you have Metallica. So you have Megadeth, Slayer, and Metallica, which are the most well-known thrash bands of all time. We all know Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning. We all know Symphony of Destruction. We all know Peace Sells. We all know Raining Blood. We all know that kind of stuff. But when the list is portrayed, it's saying number 10 is Overkill. And me saying that, it's like a lot of these kids that are out there nowadays don't even know who Overkill is, don't even know any of these bands that are being on this list. You have Death Angel, and a lot of people are like, well, who's Death Angel? So if you're a new kid growing up listening to metal, you're really going to look at this list and probably not understand who a lot of these bands are. Because when I was growing up in the early 2000s and the early 90s, because I'm an 80s kid, they had a thing called Headbangers Ball where they would play metal music, and you would hear Exodus, Anthrax, Pantera, Slipknot, Hatebreed, Lamb of God, 6 Feet Under. You would hear these bands that are out there tearing shit up. But for the people nowadays, there's nothing out there that's telling these kids good music. They're just saying, well, the bands that are out there now, Trivium, Curb, System of a Down, that's metal. I mean, I'm not saying those bands, any of those bands I just named right there, are horrible, because I listen to all those bands. But I'm not a kid that's going to say, well, who's a Death Angel? They're not thrash. You know, I think this list is compiled from a lot of famous bands. Most of them are bands that people know, like Testament, Exodus. And I'll say this, the most popular metal bands in the thrash genre came from the Bay Area. San Francisco, California, you had Metallica, you had Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer. They all came from like California area. And the San Francisco Bay Area is Testament, Exodus, and Metallica. Those bands are aggressive, and if you ever hear thrash metal, those are the bands that most people talk about, because they, to me, were the integrators of this genre of music. They took it from the days of being fast and aggressive to basically the mainstream, because you had, before them, you had Motorhead, Venom, and a lot of bands like that were just playing really fast and aggressive music, but they took it to the next level and getting it more popularized and playing faster and louder and more aggressive. And if it wasn't for Metallica, like I said before, Metallica is one of those bands that got radio play. They got radio MTV to play their stuff. But is Metallica the greatest band of all time? That could be said yes. It could be yes, or it could be no. But for me, I'm a hardcore Metallica fan, hardcore Dave Mustaine, Megadeth fan, Slayer, and all those bands that are on this list. I'm a huge fan of a lot of them. But for a lot of you cats out there who are new, you're going to be like, Metallica is the best band of all time. They're the fastest band of all time. There's nobody faster. So, just for you guys, this list isn't the greatest bands of all time. There's a lot more heavier and faster bands out there. These are just the most mainstream. Like Caught in the Mosh, it has a very punk-influenced groove to it, and punk is always been one of those genres of music that always is fast, always is aggressive, and that's where thrash metal, I think, came from. It's from bands like Misfits and stuff like that were playing really, really fast, that integrated. That's what Anthrax integrated, like the really fast drumming, and they brought it to the basically playing faster and faster and faster. And I think Anthrax, nowadays their newer music isn't as fast as it once was, but Anthrax is still one of the innovators of that genre of music. So then you have Megadeth, and if it wasn't for Dave Mustaine being kicked out of Metallica for being a drunk, violent person, you wouldn't have Peace Sells and Who's Buying. You wouldn't have Good Morning Black Friday. You wouldn't have any of those kind of songs. They might have been integrated into Metallica, but I think what Dave Mustaine did was a very similar band to Metallica, because if you listen to it, Metallica and Megadeth are very similar in their styles. Very similar, because Dave Mustaine was formerly in Metallica. And if Dave Mustaine was in Metallica, you wouldn't have Kirk Hammett in Metallica. Kirk Hammett would have stayed probably in Exodus and would have probably just tore shit up over there. Because if you hear the new Exodus, I think it was like Exodus. If you just type in YouTube Exodus featuring Kirk Hammett 2014, the song that comes up, you can definitely hear Kirk Hammett ripping on that album, ripping on that CD, and on that track, because you can tell he still wants to play very fast and aggressive music. You have Slayer, which I've never been the hugest Slayer fan. I know they're very fast, very aggressive. Seen them live in concert. They've done a lot for the metal genre. I just don't really care for like Kerry King solos. Other than that, I think Slayer is one of the greatest thrash bands of all time. Speed, thrash, whatever you want to call it. They integrated a lot, and some of the riffs do sound the same, like Rain in Blood, Dead Skin Mask are some of my favorite songs. And those are probably some of the most popular songs by Slayer. But when it comes to the main act on this list, there's nobody going to deny that this is the greatest band of all time, because everyone's going, well, it's Metallica. And it still boggles my mind to this day that they have on local radio stations, at least here in the U.S., they have like the Metallica Hour, and it's never Ride the Lightning, never Master Puppets, and especially never Kill Them All they play. It's always either Justice for All, the Black Album, or Load or Reload. They don't even play the newer stuff, and they don't even play Saint Anger. So I've always wondered why Metallica gets their own hour on the radio station. I mean, they are one of the greatest bands of all time. You can't deny they have some damn good songs like Master Puppets, One, Fade the Black. You can't deny that some of those songs are aggressive. I don't care if they took Dave Mustaine's riffs and messed with them and did them themselves. I don't care. You gotta say what they have created is some of the greatest music in the last 30 years. Even if it's fast, it's not aggressive, you gotta take it and say, yes, they did actually make some decently good music. Like Fade the Black. That's one of the best songs of all time. One, for example, one of the best songs of all time. You have Master of Puppets. And Master of Puppets was written by James Hetfield and Cliff Burton, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't read the book in a long time. But for all these bands, guys, they're very stereotypical. The last 6 bands are very stereotypical of what people think thrash metal is. So this is Loudwire's top 10 best thrash bands of all time. Let me know who you guys think should be on this list. Is there a lot of bands missing? I think they missed Motorhead, Venom, and a few other bands that were out at the time. But these are the bands that actually took the thrash metal genre to a higher level. In 2015, you have Trivium, which does some thrash. Some of their albums are thrash. If you don't agree with me, listen to some of their stuff, and listen to some of Shadows Fall stuff. Some of that is very fast and very aggressive. Those are some of the bands that I can think of that could be considered thrash metal. Some of you guys might be like, well, that's metalcore. Some of you guys might say that's new metal. Whatever. I'm just saying from what I think it is. I don't base my liking a band. It's thrash. No, that's grindcore. No, that's hardcore. No, that's punk rock. I don't care if it's something I like. It's something good. It has a heavy groove to it. I'm gonna listen to it. I more or less listen to more slow, sluggish stuff, or stuff like Disturbed, System of a Down. That's just my taste in heavy music. But as always, I'm Trevor, and I'll definitely see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching the top thrash bands of all time.